46 people watched a man die in broad daylight, but not a single one of them saw who pulled the trigger. To understand how an entire American town agreed to commit murder and keep it a secret for over 40 years, we have to go back to the beginning. You might think vigilante justice is something from the Old West, a relic of the 1800s. But what if I told you the most famous act of frontier justice happened in 1981, right in the heart of the Midwest? You are about to enter the town of Skidmore, Missouri, a quiet farming community that was hiding a dark, violent secret. A secret that would eventually explode on Main Street in a hail of gunfire. Skidmore was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. It was a town of just a few hundred people surrounded by cornfields and cattle. It was the definition of small town safety. Except for one man. Ken Rex McElroy. For decades, this one man held an entire population hostage through fear, intimidation, and a twisted manipulation of the legal system. To understand the killing, you have to understand the bully. Ken Rex McElroy was a large, imposing figure with thick sideburns and cold, hard eyes. He was a local, born and raised in the area, but he wasn't a farmer. He was a thief. He started small, poaching raccoons and stealing grain, but as he grew older, his crimes became more brazen. He moved on to stealing livestock, hijacking antiques, and burning down the property of anyone who dared to look him in the eye. But it wasn't just theft. It was the psychological terror. McElroy would park his truck on the edge of your property and just watch you for hours, cleaning a shotgun. He would follow women home at night, driving just inches from their bumper. He was accused of statutory rape, assault, arson, and hog stealing. Over the years, he faced dozens of felony charges, and yet he never spent any significant time in prison. You're probably asking yourself, how is that even possible? How does a man commit felonies in a small town and walk away every time? The answer lies in the loopholes of the justice system and a very expensive lawyer. McElroy knew exactly how to play the game. He would get trial dates postponed again and again until witnesses moved away or memories faded. And when legal maneuvering didn't work, he used brute force. If you were set to testify against Ken Rex, you might wake up to find your barn engulfed in flames. Or maybe your dog would be found dead on your porch. Or he would simply walk up to you in the grocery store, lean in close, and tell you exactly what would happen to your children if you showed up to court. The fear in Skidmore was palpable. It was heavy. People stopped going out at night. They bought guns. They locked doors that had never been locked before. The law, which was supposed to protect these tax-paying citizens, seemed to only work for the criminal. McElroy strutted through town like a king, bragging about his invincibility. He truly believed he was untouchable, but even a king can push his subjects too far. The turning point, the moment the town's fear turned into rage, came involving a local grocer named Bo Bowenkamp. Bo was an elderly, well-liked man in the community. One summer afternoon, McElroy accused Bo of cheating his daughter over a piece of candy. It was a trivial, made-up grievance, but McElroy didn't care. He drove his truck to the loading dock behind the store, pulled out a shotgun, and shot the elderly grocer in the neck. Miraculously, Bo survived, and for once, the law seemed to catch up. McElroy was arrested and convicted of assault with intent to kill. The town let out a collective breath. Finally, the monster was going away. But then, the justice system failed them one last, fatal time. McElroy's lawyer filed an appeal, and Ken Rex was released on bond. He was free again. And what did he do with his freedom? He went straight to the D&G Tavern in Skidmore, carrying a rifle, a direct violation of his bond, and publicly threatened to finish off Bo Bowenkamp. He told everyone in the bar that he would never spend a day in jail. He was laughing at them. He was laughing at the law. This brings us to July 10th, 1981. The atmosphere in Skidmore was electric with tension. The sheriff, a man named Dan Estes, had told the locals that legally his hands were tied until McElroy actually hurt someone again. The town realized that if they waited for the law to help them, Bo Bowenkamp would be dead, and maybe others too. But wait until you hear what happened next, because this is where the story shifts from a crime drama to a tragedy. The events of that morning would change Skidmore from a sleepy farming village into a name synonymous with vigilante justice. On that hot July morning, the men of Skidmore gathered at the Legion Hall. It wasn't a secret meeting in the woods, it was right in town. 60 men showed up. These weren't gangsters, they were farmers, businessmen, fathers. They were desperate. They discussed their options. Could they get him committed? Could they get a restraining order? Every legal avenue was a dead end. While they were debating, news arrived. Ken Rex McElroy and his wife Trina had just driven into town. They were at the D&G Tavern having a drink. The meeting at the Legion Hall ended abruptly. There was no shout of "let's get 'em," no chaotic rally. The men just stood up, walked out to their trucks, and drove to Main Street. Imagine the scene. It's mid-morning. The sun is beating down. McElroy is inside the bar drinking. Outside, the street begins to fill up. Men are standing on the sidewalks, leaning against trucks, crossing their arms. They aren't saying much. They are just waiting. McElroy finished his drinks. He bought a 6-pack of beer to go. He walked out the front door of the tavern, blinking in the sunlight. He saw the crowd. He didn't run. He didn't seem afraid. Remember, he thought he was untouchable. He walked to his Chevy Silverado, tossed the beer inside, and climbed into the driver's seat. His wife, Trina, got into the passenger side. McElroy started the engine. He lit a cigarette. And then the crowd closed in. They surrounded the truck, pressing in tight. The air was silent for a split second. Then McElroy reached for something. Trina said he was reaching for a cigarette. The townspeople said he was reaching for the gun he kept in the truck. Shots rang out, not a barrage, but precise fire. A high-powered rifle and a .22 caliber weapon fired almost simultaneously from 2 different directions. Glass shattered. The bullet struck McElroy in the head and neck. He slumped over the steering wheel. The engine was still idling. The bully of Skidmore was dead. This is where the story gets truly unbelievable. Trina screamed. She was covered in glass and blood, screaming that they had killed her husband. But the crowd, they didn't panic. They didn't flee the scene in a chaotic scatter. They simply dispersed. They walked back to their businesses, went home to their farms, or went back to work. When the ambulance arrived, the street was quiet. The police arrived shortly after. There had been roughly 46 people standing on that street when the shots were fired. 46 eyewitnesses. The investigation began immediately. The FBI was called in. They interviewed everyone. They grilled the townspeople. They convened grand juries. And do you know what they found? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Every single person told the same story. I didn't see who shot him. I was looking the other way. The sun was in my eyes. I was ducking for cover. Even the people standing 5 feet away from the truck claimed they saw nothing. It was a conspiracy of silence that was impenetrable. The media frenzy was intense. 60 Minutes came to town. Newspapers around the world ran headlines about the town that killed its bully. The prosecutor tried everything to get an indictment, but without a witness, there is no case. Trina McElroy named names. She pointed out the men she believed did it, but her testimony wasn't enough without corroboration, and no one in Skidmore was talking. The town protected the shooters. They viewed the killing not as murder, but as a public service. In their eyes, the system had broken its contract with them. They had done what the sheriff, the judges, and the lawyers refused to do. They had removed the predator, but there was a cost. The town that got away with murder was marked. The economy of Skidmore crumbled in the years that followed. It was as if the violence of that day cursed the soil. Tragedies continued to plague the town in the decades after, almost like a haunting. The silence held, but the town slowly died. To this day, the murder of Ken Rex McElroy remains officially unsolved. No one has ever been charged. The men who pulled the triggers are likely dead now, taking their secret to the grave. The story of Skidmore serves as a dark mirror to the American justice system. It forces us to ask uncomfortable questions about the line between law and survival. Which brings me to the question I want to ask you. When the legal system fails completely, and a community is being terrorized by a violent predator, is vigilante justice ever morally justified? Or were the men of Skidmore simply murderers who deserved to be in prison? I want to read your perspective in the comments below. This is a debate that has no easy answer.